the fifth person to join the meeting.
My name is Adam Ash, and I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. As your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of Adobe Connect that will help you maximize your participation in today's webinar. To download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, locate the Handouts pod directly above the chat area. Click on the name of the file and then click the download button. To send a chat message, type your message into the text box. Hit enter or click the message bubble icon to send. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there's no need to type anything at this time. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session where presenters will take every opportunity to answer some of your questions that you have posed during the presentation. Type the question into the chat box as they arise. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you'll be provided with a link to take a 5-minute online survey about today's presentation. This information is used to assist us in further planning and development. You will be able to access the link to the evaluation on the last slide of the PowerPoint. We appreciate your feedback regarding the webinar. Finally, this event will be archived in OJJDP's online university at ojjdpou.org in approximately 3 weeks. In addition, you can find additional webinars related to the Unity series in the online university. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'll now turn it over to Kara McDonough with OJJDP for a brief opening announcement.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Kara McDonough, and I work with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. We're really glad that you can join us today. We're very excited to have our presenters to talk to you about this important topic. Before I introduce our presenters, I just wanted to talk a little bit about OJJDP's partnership with Unity for the Today's Native Leaders Initiative. And the Today's Native Leader Initiative is a 4-year cooperative agreement with Unity. We're thrilled that we get to partner with them. And basically it is a tribal youth leadership development initiative. And it provides regional trainings for teams of young people who develop action plans to address issues of importance to them. There have already been a number of regional trainings across the country, and there's one coming up in early April in Minneapolis, another one that will happen in Alaska at the end of August, and another one in California in December. Lynn-Ann will talk a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation, but we wanted to just let you know about that resource, and also the initiative provides support for those teams of young people as they develop and then implement their community service projects. The projects have focused on lots of different things, including anti-bullying initiatives, including cultural language classes and education about traditional foods, wellness camps, and all kinds of things that are important to the young people who attend the training. So we're very glad that we get to be a resource to them and to you. We're also doing these webinars. So there's a series of the webinars that are available to you at the online university. They are on topics like forming a tribal youth council and other kinds of things that will help make your council more effective. And then we're also going to be having a national gathering of the youth that participate in the Today's Native Leader Initiative, and that will be in conjunction with Unity's National Conference in 2017. So, please take advantage of those resources, and we hope that you enjoy the webinar today. Our presenters are Mary Kim Titla and Lynn-Ann Yazzie, both with Unity. Lynn-Ann is the project coordinator for Today's Native Leaders, the initiative I just spoke to you about. She's from Chinle, Arizona, and is a member of the Navajo Nation. She received her bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in secondary education and was a high school math teacher for 5 years before joining Unity. The exciting thing about Lynn is that she actually began her journey with Unity over 20 years ago as a youth participant. She's also been an advisor, and now she's a Unity staff member. Our other presenter is Mary Kim Titla, and she is the Executive Director at Unity. She's a staunch advocate for Native American youth and has testified before Congress about Indian education and youth-related issues. She's also a former TV broadcaster and a school administrator, so she brings a wealth of knowledge. She's a 20-year veteran of the TV as a TV news reporter and worked for NBC affiliate stations in Arizona and was inducted into the Cronkite Hall of Fame at Arizona State University. She estimates telling as many as 5,000 stories during her career and has received awards from the Associated Press, Arizona Press Club, and the Native American Journalists Association. And we're very lucky and grateful to get to partner with her. So I will turn it over to Mary Kim to open the webinar in a good way.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We always like to start everything that we do at our events in a good way. And on this day, we're going to start with prayer. So I ask everyone to please join me. Creator God, thank you for the many blessings that you've bestowed upon us. Thank you for this opportunity to share knowledge and information with those that have joined us. We ask that you will be with everyone wherever they're at, be with their families, help us to come together and collaborate, partner for the good of our Native American youth. We thank you for all that you've done in the past, all that you're doing in the present, and all you're going to do in the future. I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Thank you. Amen. And now I'd like to introduce Lynn Ann, who will talk about our webinar today.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Adam, Kara, and Mary Kim for the introduction, the start to our webinar. And I'd like to just welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we're going to be able to share some very useful information for you all. And throughout the webinar, just keep in mind if you have any questions, there's always the chat room there that you can go ahead and include your questions, and Kara will go ahead and bring those up throughout the webinar. So today we're going to be talking about youth council planning, so creating a year-long calendar. And this came about because we always get questions, you know, from youth council advisors and from youth themselves about their involvement throughout the year. You know, how do we stay and how do we keep our youth council active? A lot of times what tends to happen is, you know, they know that they're going to attend Unity events, or they know that they're going to attend conferences, and they end up just doing fundraising throughout the entire year. But we're, you know, offering additional information and resources so that you have something more to do throughout the year with your youth council. And so our learning objectives for today are to learn about, one, Unity history and youth council development. So for those of you who may not already have a youth council developed, this will, you know, share some information about how you can do that. The second objective is to understand the importance of developing a calendar for your youth council. You know, why is that important? The third objective is to develop a year-long calendar using the Youth Can curriculum, which is a part of, you know, Unity's many resources and curriculums that we have here. The fourth one is just to learn processes for action planning and youth council involvement. Again, how are you going to keep your youth council active throughout the year? And we're going to go ahead and get started here, and I'll ask Mary Kim to kind of talk a little bit about Unity's history, background, and mission statement, and then she'll talk a little bit about the development of youth councils. So Mary Kim?
Thank you, Lynn Ann. Well, Unity has had a vibrant history and a great track record of working with Native American youth. This year we will celebrate 40 years of Unity. We have to give a lot of credit to Mr. J.R. Cook, a member of the Cherokee Nation, who founded Unity in 1976. It has been based in Oklahoma for a number of years, actually until about 3 years ago. The organization headquarters was in Oklahoma City. Since 2013, Unity makes its home in Mesa, Arizona. So we're very proud of the work that's been done, and we've seen a lot of great results. Unity's mission is really one of balance, and I say balance because that's a lot of the part of the philosophy of many of our Native American culture, and its mission statement reflects that balance, which is to foster the spiritual, mental, physical, and social development of American Indian and Alaska Native youth, and to help build a strong, unified, and self-reliant Native America through involvement of its youth. So what is a youth council? We are going to be talking about that today. Some of you have experience working with youth councils presently, or maybe you've had in the past, or you're getting ready to work with one. Part of my background has been serving as an advisor to a youth council, and many of them, come together having questions about where to start and figuring out, what purpose the youth council will serve. There's many types of youth councils that are directly sponsored or hosted by the parent organization being a tribe, but it also could be a school, it could be a church, or a club. So there's various types of youth councils. We want, of course, leadership training to happen within the youth council, and when you affiliate with Unity, we do support you by providing a toolkit on our website, and you'll have some information about our website later on. But we do offer a toolkit that is inclusive of a resolution template, constitution and bylaws template. We talk about the membership fee to become affiliated, and the importance of service projects. So I commend all of you advisors and those that are members of youth councils for being involved and providing that support to the local community. So I'll toss it back to Lynn Ann, who will go into more about the organizational activities of a youth council. Lynn Ann, if you can hear me, you may be on mute.
Okay, there we go. Now can you hear me? Okay, I apologize for that. So now that you're officially a youth council, what happens next? And this is where, right when everybody starts to get going, everybody's excited about it, they want to be involved, what do we do? And this is where, people tend to kind of hit a wall and say, well, we know that we want to go to events, so we probably need to find money or raise money. So then they get into that whole, what I was mentioning earlier about just fundraising throughout the year. That's all they do, which is a great experience for youth, them learning how to kind of manage money and try to plan events and things. But one of the important things that we really like to emphasize is getting organized as a youth council. And things to consider when you're getting organized are, one, your roles and responsibilities of youth council members and advisors, really having that understanding of, what roles do the youth play in organizing meetings, maybe even creating the calendar, looking at the goals and objectives of the youth council. It's very important for the youth to be able to share their ideas and know that their, voice is being listened to, and that those ideas they're sharing are valued and they're considered. They're taken into consideration, and because that just develops ownership for them, and they feel like this is our thing to do with what we want. And of course, you have the advisor, who's such an important part of all of that in supporting the youth ideas, and also being there though to say, well, this is feasible. This may be a little larger for us to, larger idea for us to take care of later. But it's just kind of that, that advisement of the youth. So all of those roles and responsibilities are actually outlined in one of the handouts. If you look at under the handout section where it says how to establish a Unity Youth Council, all of that information is outlined in that handout, so you can find it there. It's also available on our website as well. So other things to consider when you're getting organized is your meeting dates and locations. It's a good idea to try to have a consistent, whether you meet once a week, whether you meet twice a month, once a month. Try to be consistent with when your meetings are so that the youth can kind of get into that routine of understanding, okay, every other week we have a youth council meeting. It's on the same day. It's at the same location. So just that routine is very helpful for them because we know that our youth have very busy lives between school and sports and family, so all these things that they have going on, it just helps them to remember when your youth council meetings are happening. It's a good idea to develop goals and objectives with your youth council. What is the purpose of having a youth council? What is it that you guys want to accomplish throughout the year? That way at the end of the year you can look back and say, you know what, did we do what we wanted to in the first place? Did we follow what we said, the goals that we set for ourselves? So that's a good way to get organized. One of the other things that we're actually talking about today is creating a calendar. And so as we do that, again, things to consider when you're creating a calendar is going to be the frequency of your youth council meetings. Again, whether you meet every week, every other week, once a month. Some youth councils might only meet 4 times a year. That's really going to depend on how you all decide to set those dates. And then the type of business meetings, there's all types of meetings. There's a business meeting where you're going to follow, say you could follow the Robert's Rules of Order. Then you could have an executive meeting where it would just be your officers and maybe your advisor, where not all members are present. You could have an informational meeting, which is not necessarily, you're not really taking care of business. Maybe you just the advisor needs to share information. You could have an education meeting, which we're going to get into later throughout the webinar. You can have a meeting specific to fundraising. So identifying what the purpose of each of those meetings are helps the youth to understand that there's a difference in the goals of that day, and what you want to accomplish for that day. There's also different lengths of meetings that you get to. Some people meet for 30 minutes, some people meet for an hour. I know some youth councils that meet on a Saturday for 4 hours at a time and take care of all the business that needs to be taken care of. So again, that's up to your youth council or your youth group, how often and for how long you want to meet. It's always important to have an agenda for each of your meetings so that the youth kind of have an outline of what is going to be going on throughout the day. They know what to expect. And a lot of times they want to know what's happening next. So having an agenda is a very important thing as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Mary Kim so we can gather a little bit of information.
Okay, we're going to have 2 poll questions. The first question involves frequency of your youth council meetings. So if you could answer the question, how frequently does your youth council meet? Do they meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, or other? It will be helpful for us to know that. And as you can see, the numbers, it looks like a large percentage meet weekly, and the largest percentage actually meet monthly, and then the next largest is weekly. That's awesome. Are all of you able to see the poll? I just want to make sure because I see some of you typing in your answer, and I'm not sure if that's because you're not able to see the poll. Okay, well, we'll move on to the next poll. And on the next poll, we wish to know how long do your youth council meetings last? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, other. And I'm going to guess that other would be more than 2 hours or less than 30 minutes. So a majority, or at least I would say almost half, as they meet for an hour. The next largest group meets 2 hours. So thank you all for participating in our poll. It's really helpful to know that on our end how long your meetings normally last. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Unities Creed, and this is something that we share with our youth councils and those affiliated with our network, which could also be individuals. And I'll just point out a couple of things in our creed. Of course, again, you know, maintaining balance in our lives, so we'll start with that first. Accept spirituality as an important foundation for a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And then the next one I would like to share is the third point, which is we'll be honest, understanding, and respectful of the diversity and uniqueness of self, others, and our environment. We really take this to heart and encourage our youth to really take that to heart. We, as you know, have a diverse world, and when we get to the conference, we absolutely see that diversity. And so as we continue our webinar, we'd like you to keep that in mind and build upon our creed and the component of education and why that's important. And I'll let Lynn take over from here.
Thank you, Mary Kim. So when you have a youth group or a youth council, you know, who decides they want to be involved and take action, then you want them to be able to stand for something. What is your youth council's purpose? Again, throughout the year, looking forward, you always want to have goals in mind because, you know, every goal, it doesn't matter how, you know, how small you think the goal is. It's just kind of reaching those goals that helps the youth to become more motivated and inspired to, you know, be involved in greater things. So when we talk about the Unity Creed and youth committing to that, when they become a part of a Unity Youth Council, you know, what does it mean to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle? Maybe they don't quite, maybe they have some general idea of it, but do they really grasp what it means to live a healthy lifestyle? So what we want them to do in the youth councils is we want them to learn about that. We want them to learn about spirituality and what is health and wellness specifically. You know, what does that mean when somebody says health and wellness, or what does it mean when somebody says to be healthy? Well, the education component that we're going to talk about today, the Youth Can curriculum, is actually it's a way for the youth to learn about these things and gain that knowledge. But why would you want that? Why would you want an education component to, you know, added to your youth council? Well, one of the things, you know, we always hear, you know, knowledge is power. That's one of, you know, a very common saying that people, but what does that mean? Well, as you can see, I did put a picture up there of Nelson Mandela. You know, when I saw this quote, I thought it was very relevant to what we're talking about today, that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And that's one of the things in everything that we encourage the youth to do. You know, we always tell them, you're the, you know, leaders of the future and all that, you know, in encouragement. But for our Unity youth, we really encourage them to be leaders of today, hence the name of our actual initiative, which is today's Native Leaders that the youth developed on their own. And so we use this education to, one, uphold the Unity Creed, but also to accomplish the Youth Council's goals. And the founder of Unity, JR, always said, you know, youth councils are not just about fundraising. It's about, you know, everything that Unity stands for is to help Native youth lead the positive, productive lives so that they can make a difference in their communities, tribes, and throughout the country. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we have a curriculum here at Unity that's called Youth Can, and it's an education program that provides opportunities for youth and youth council members, one, to understand what it means to live the Unity way, and then two, just to develop leadership skills like planning, coordinating, presenting, all these skills that are going to be helpful to them throughout high school, but more so through higher education, or if they choose to go to vocational schools, or maybe they're going to go into a career immediately following high school. But these skills are all relevant in any of those situations, or however they decide to, whatever they decide to do in the future. The curriculum itself is actually broken up into 12, or it's 12 different units. And as you can see here, I've listed 6, and I'll move on and we'll look at the next 6 after this. So the first one is leadership for today and tomorrow, and then spirituality, respecting and preserving our environment, tribal sovereignty, tribal government, honoring and preserving culture and heritage. So anytime that we talk to our youth and we have them brainstorm challenges or issues that they face themselves, or that they see as part of their community and what their people are facing, a lot of these ones, the words that are highlighted there in blue, are ones that you'll see come up over and over again when we say, the top 10 issues of facing Native and Indian country. And so these are very common ones. So the curriculum itself is broken up into these 12 units that focus on each of these topics. So the next 6 topics are health and wellness, keys to educational success, exploring career opportunities, building strong families, service to others, and understanding personal finances. So those are the 12 units. Now each unit is, and let me just make a quick statement here. I know that the webinar is focused on creating a year-long calendar. Well, we would like you to, this education component is one thing, one resource that you can use to create this calendar. So I will be getting to that discussion. We will be talking about calendars after we talk about the Youth Can curriculum. And so the setup of each unit starts with a Unity Beliefs section, and then goes into learning objectives, content and knowledge, presentation tips and suggestions, links and resources, and then let's talk about it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go just a little into detail about each of these sections that are part of the units. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary Kim to talk about the Unity Believes section.
Okay, so I think Lynn Ann made reference to the Unity Way, and we like to call it the Unity Way because it's unique, I think, to Unity in that there are certain things that you'll experience as a youth or as an advisor when you go to Unity. And so there has to be a belief system behind that Unity Way. Unity's core beliefs and practices are the basis for this curriculum. And of course, we want to help our young people by empowering them. And how do we do that? We think we have some great tools, and of course this curriculum being one of those tools. And in each of the units there will be examples of how to empower youth and how to promote the Unity Way. Among the Unity beliefs are that Native American youth can become effective leaders, that they can be active citizens of their tribes and communities, they can be powerful voices and advocates for change, and they can contribute to community decision-making processes. And we've seen that time and time again. We have some awesome young leaders out there who are not only taking charge of their lives, they're taking charge of their communities and are actually very hands-on in activities that they're involved in. So we think we have a great tool, and I'm going to toss back to Lynn Ann, who will talk more about the learning objectives.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you, Mary Kim. So the learning objectives is another section in the unit. in each unit of the Youth Can curriculum. So objectives are basically statements about what you expect to, what the goals are, what is the purpose of that unit or that topic. So for example, we're going to use the leadership for today and tomorrow. The learning objectives for that unit are to develop a basic understanding of leadership, to compare and distinguish between styles and practices of traditional and modern leaders in your community. So these are just things that if your youth council were to utilize this, information or this curriculum, you would, that this is what they would be learning about. Those are the objectives for that one unit. And remember, there's 12 different ones. So the content and knowledge section is basically what the youth are learning. What information are they gathering? So, for example, in the leadership for today and tomorrow, to gain background knowledge of leadership, read the articles listed in the link section of this unit. Focus on leadership qualities, characteristics, and skills. So what they would be doing is basically just learning about leadership in different ways. They could read an article. They could interview people. For example, in number 2, it says, read through back copies of your local newspaper and identify 3 different leaders to interview. So, if you want to have an education component to your youth council or youth group, however you're organized, this is, again, one way that you can do that. And they would be learning about leadership for today and tomorrow. Then comes the presentation tips and suggestions. And this basically is how will the youth share what they have learned. So now we've learned all about, we've learned about leadership, we've done interviews, we've read articles, we might have read a book, we might have, watched a video that kind of tells us what leadership is or shares leadership information. Now what are we going to do with that information once we have it? And people tend to get caught up on the word presentation because, you picture standing up at the front of the room making a presentation, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the way that the youth present their information every time or share their information. So one of the examples from the Leadership for Today and Tomorrow unit is that they could ask members of the Youth Council to write down 2 to 3 words that mean leadership to them, and then discuss how these are similar or different from what was stated in the articles they read. So now the youth are learning something, and they're sharing it with others, and they're having discussions. And it's a whole new component that you could bring to the youth councils, and just it makes it, more. It's very enriching for the youth themselves. And so once they have presented, that information, I'm going to have Mary Kim. The next section is talking about the links and resources in each of the units.
Thank you, Lynn-Ann. The links and resources is included in the curriculum packet, and really it's for purposes of overview and general guide to service learning. There's recommended links in each of the units, and this is certainly not limited to those links. There are many of you who have expertise in various areas that you could add your own links to the curriculum. For Unit 1, for leadership, we include a link for tribal governance and leadership yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And then for the development of leadership skills, we would include links that the youth and advisors can look at. We also include information about Youth for Tribal Government, which is a resource provided by Kicking Bird Associates, which was created in 2001. So there is, I think some really credible resources and links that the curriculum provides that you can tap into, and that we can encourage our young people to tap into. It's obviously, this is part of the education, and I think it's important for them to look at those resources. So we'll go on to the next, and go back to Leanne.
Thank you, Mary Kim. So the last section in each unit that each unit contains is called Let's Talk About It. So now that the youth have gone out there, they have gathered the information, they have presented the information by using the links and resources, and now it's time kind of an assessment, an overview or an assessment of what has been learned. It's kind of a check for understanding. Like, did you guys actually understand what it is that was kind of what we explored here, the fact that we explored leadership for today and tomorrow. So they might be doing, activities, or they might be asked to answer, they might be answering questions that pertain to that. For example, do you agree with the statement, everyone can be a leader? Brainstorm at least 5 reasons to justify your answer. So we want them to, we want to be able to assess what they've learned. And again, I know that when we say curriculum and a lot of the words that I'm using, it sounds like you're sitting in a classroom. And that may be, a big turnoff to maybe a lot of you who say, well, I'm not really a teacher, but I love working with youth. It may be a turnoff to the youth themselves saying, I sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day. Why do I want to go to a youth council meeting and then sit in a classroom for another 2 hours? So just the great thing about this curriculum is that you can do what you want with it. You don't have to do all 12 units. You don't have to focus on that. Your youth council can choose to do 1 unit. It can choose to do 4 units. It's up to you, what your youth are comfortable with. And just getting them to understand that, why it's important to be educated. Why is it important to just be educated in general? And that doesn't mean, sitting in a classroom and being talked to. That may just mean that they're exploring their own, the topics the way that they want to explore them. And it's just good to have general knowledge about, things, especially when we talk about our tribal governments, when we talk about sovereignty. They're going to be the leaders of our tribe soon. And so they should have this kind of background and education that in order to be able to take on those responsibilities. So how can you use this curriculum when it comes to your group or your youth council? It can be done, the education program can be done as an individual. So if each person wants to learn about leadership in their own way, they can do that. Or maybe they're going to team up, or maybe you're going to, as a whole group, decide to read a book together about leadership, or maybe you're going to watch a movie as a whole group, and then you'll have a discussion about it. So there's a lot of different ways you can format the use of this curriculum. You can alternate business meetings and your education program. So throughout the year, if you meet twice a month, then maybe the first meeting's a business meeting, and then the next time you meet is all focused on whatever topic you're going to focus on. Maybe you're focusing on the environment that month. And so you can alternate your meetings in that way. If you only meet once a month, then maybe you want to split up your meeting in half. The first half we take care of business, if we have to discuss upcoming events and activities, if we maybe are still discussing our bylaws and constitution, whatever business you have to take care of, you do that for the first hour. And then you focus on what it is that you're going to be learning that day, just expanding that knowledge. And then when you're going to be, make sure that you set specific dates, times, and locations for education. If your youth council or your youth group is going to commit to doing this, then you want to lay out, you want to make sure that you set specific dates and times for that. You set aside time specifically for education, so you know that it's going to happen during those times. Again, you can decide what units and the number of units to be covered for the year. 12 might be overwhelming. You might say, you know what, we just don't have time to cover one every month. That's so much, so much to do. So then maybe you pick 4. Pick your top 4 and do one topic every 3 months or every 4 months. You pick 3 or 4. So those are different ways that you could use the curriculum throughout the year. Now again, using it to create a calendar. You want to identify members to create the calendar for your youth council. It may take a little bit longer if you try to do it all as a whole group. So maybe you have your advisor, maybe you have your youth council officers, maybe you have some youth council members that, are strongly, they just really want to be involved and they want to be part of creating that calendar. You can take those volunteers as well. So once you have your group that's going to be setting up your calendar, select the order in which your educational units will be covered. So again, if you're only going to do 4, you need to make that selection of the top 4 that you're going to focus on. And just what order do you want to cover them in. And then you want to identify dates for business meetings, education, programming, fundraising, and events and conferences. So you're really going to have to look at a layout through your entire year. And I know it's difficult to know what events might come up or what opportunities might arise for your youth council. But you can try to, predict as much as possible. Let's say, for example, Unity mid-year conference is generally in February every year. The Unity National Conference is now generally in July. So you can at least count on there's 2 events we know, that we're going to have to plan for. Or you might say, we're going to have elections during this time. A lot of you operate on different calendars. Some of you might operate on a school calendar, which could be August to May. Some of you could operate on a January to December calendar. So those are all things, again, take into consideration when you're creating that. And it's going to depend on how your youth council chooses to operate. So I created a sample calendar. Now I know this is pretty small, the writing is pretty small, but there is a handout that is called the Youth Can Annual Calendar Sample. You can click on that and you can actually print it out or get a larger picture of it. And that just goes through, I created just kind of a sample calendar that your youth council might consider using as a basis, just to base your calendar on. So there's a place for the dates. So when will you be meeting? So this one I based on biweekly, so meeting every other week. And so I just said, okay, what type of meeting is it? Is it a business meeting? Are we going to focus on education? Are we focusing on fundraising? Are we just going to talk about the conference? Are we going to be attending a conference? So then I laid out the first meeting, introduction, selections of officers, set your meeting dates, times, and locations. It's probably a good idea to get all of your youth council members, if they probably all have calendars on their phones. A lot of them do have phones, with them. If they don't have a phone, then maybe you want to encourage them to carry around some sort of a calendar so that they can write their dates down. And then the next meeting I used as an example is the executive committee meeting. So maybe that's where the yearly calendar is going to be developed. And then the meeting after that, discuss your youth council goals and objectives for the year and talk about your calendar. And that could be an all youth council business meeting. And then you have, you haven't discussed your educational program quite yet, but maybe your next business meeting is where you'll get into that. So I have all these different samples of, or just examples of things that you can put in your calendar. For example, when you start your education component, like on February 17th, we want to do this as a whole group. We're going to select and read articles about leadership, and then we'll all share that and talk about that. And then the last column is, the fourth column is the education program, where you specify if you're actually going to be, what you're actually going to be learning during that time. And the last column is who's in charge. Is the advisor going to run that meeting? Are the presidents going to run that meeting? Maybe your vice president's going to do that. And so you can take a look at that sample calendar, and those are just ideas or ways that you can kind of set that up. Again, that is also in the handouts, so you can print that out. Obviously, I only, created the calendar to go to like the middle of May. But hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of different things that you can include and things to consider for your calendars. And then finally, just the supplemental materials that are provided for you are the handouts, How to Establish a Unity Youth Council packet, the Unity Creed, which is in the packet, and the Youth Can calendar form. There's a sample calendar, and then there's sample agendas. So the agendas actually cover, like if you want to have half business meeting and half education meeting, or if you want to just focus specifically on education. It gives you a breakdown of how many minutes you could spend on each, each topic or each item in your agenda. So it also helps you to create that. And so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Kara now to see if anybody has any questions.
Hi, thanks, Lynn-Ann. And we just wanted to make sure that we left some time for anybody who might have some questions. You can type it into the box here. I don't actually see that we have any questions now, but maybe some folks are typing. If you have any questions about the material that was presented, about the calendar or about the curriculum or anything else about the youth councils, now would be a good time to type that question in. Or if you have other questions that are maybe a little bit off the topic, but you want to take the time to get Lynn-Ann or Mary Kim to comment, that's fine as well. Okay, it does look like we have one from Michelle. Thanks for your question, Michelle. It was said there is a Unity guide kit available. How can we request one?
So Michelle, this is Lynn-Ann, or actually for everybody, the kit that Mary Kim was referring to is actually the packet, How to Establish a Unity Youth Council. So that's the kit that is available, and that is in the handouts that you can download. I believe it should be in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And so that's there for you. If you are not able to download it today, you can always go to Unity's website at www.unityinc.org, and you can look under Youth Councils for that information. And if you're referring to the Youth Can curriculum itself, we actually provide that curriculum at our advisors training at the mid-year conference and at the national conference. So your next opportunity to get a hold of the Youth Can curriculum is going to be at the National Unity Conference this summer. It's going to be in Oklahoma City from July 22nd through the 26th.
Great. Thanks, Lynn-Ann. Okay, good. Looks like we're getting some questions now. Rosalind is asking, what's an appropriate age range for a youth council to have a good mix of kids that can work well together?
Well, I'll go ahead and tackle that, and then maybe Lynn-Ann can jump in. The Unity age range, and this is really, it doesn't mean that this is an age range that you should set for youth councils, but our age range is 14 to 24. That's who we target to provide leadership training for. In terms of youth councils, that could vary with communities. We've seen communities where their age range could be up to the age of 18. We've also seen youth councils where it's similar to our age range, and then there's others that cater to a younger group by having a junior youth council. So they have a junior youth council and then a senior youth council. So it's really, I think, up to the organizers and the community to determine what's best for them, what's the best fit. And in terms of addressing the various topics and having a curriculum, I think, and maybe Lynn-Ann can address this, is sometimes the topic, there has to be, it has to be age appropriate. The younger, group may not be able to sit as long or pay attention as well, or have, the life experience to really delve into certain topics. Lynn-Ann, do you want to add to that?
Yes, and we do get that question a lot, even for youth who want to attend our events. like Mary Kim said, the content that we provide, say the speakers, the workshops, the information that's given at our events are focused on high school and college age youth. So if you have youth that are younger than that, we ask you to consider, we don't say you cannot bring them. However, we do ask you to consider whether you feel like they are mature enough to handle the content that may be discussed at the Unity event. And it's the same thing with the curriculum. Although it is, you can shape it, however you want to. So what does leadership mean to an 8-year-old? I don't know. Is that an appropriate topic you feel like they'd be able to learn about? And if so, then all you do is you just cater to that age range. However, for Unity events and conferences, generally it's 14 to 24.
Great. Okay, and Tiana asked a really good question here, and the question is, how do you engage LGBTQ youth in your council work? Do you have any strategies specifically for keeping them engaged?
Because we ask youth to kind of, I guess, be in charge of their own learning, or we really include the youth in planning and a lot of the things that we do. We put it in their hands. So if it's something that is important to them and they are a part of the LGBT community, then we do encourage them to, learn about it in terms of how they how it affects them. So, for example, if you're going to talk about leadership, maybe they want to talk about, or learn about and research about the people who have led the way, for different policies to be, for different things to be possible, for equality in marriage and things like that. So maybe they want to read about and talk about the leaders who've led those, types of, I guess, when they've tried to make that change. And so because it's very dynamic type of curriculum. And actually, if you wanted to have a youth council that was focused specifically on that, you can choose to do that as well. We have a lot of youth who are actually really active in that community. And Leha Spoonhunter, who has been a part of many of Unity's programs and has been a part of Unity for a long time, spearheads a lot of discussions and events focused on the LGBT community.
And just to add to that, at Unity events, we find in evaluations specifically that our youth like peer-to-peer presentations. So we make every effort to bring in youth or create opportunities for young people to engage with each other. That seems to be very popular and important to them, I think, because one, they can relate to each other. They seem to respond better to young people than, let's say, an adult, who is talking about a certain subject. So just engaging more peer-to-peers and bringing in people who, can address certain concerns and have that experience, to back them up or to be able to talk to it.
Great. And, for the folks who have asked questions, if you have a follow-up question or if you wanted to clarify anything, please do feel free to, type that follow-up question in as well. So Lorenzo had a question here, and it is, can you elaborate on the different types of meetings again?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your question. And yes, for the different types of meetings, so you could have a business meeting where, if you guys are familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, where you follow, that agenda. You have your opening and you talk about old business and new business. And so that's kind of your business meeting where your youth are actually, having discussions and voting on different things. Maybe they want to vote to be a part of a community event, or maybe they want to vote to support a certain like policy or something to that effect. So whatever business your youth council has to vote on, those are business meetings. When we talk about executive or officers meetings, that would include like your president, your maybe vice president, treasurer, secretary. Those are your executive committee meetings. When you talk about your informational meetings, maybe you guys are going to be going to, maybe there's a new policy in school that the youth have to abide by, you know, for being a part of a youth council or whatever. So you want to just share information. You're not exactly voting on anything. It's not just the executive committee members, it's your whole youth council, but you just want to share information with them. That's an informational meeting. When you talk about the educational meeting, that could be if you're using the youth if you're using the Youth Can curriculum, that meeting may be focused just on the educational part of it itself. I hope that helped. And then maybe if you're having a meeting specific to fundraising, you might spend a whole hour talking about fundraising and organizing that part of it. So again, it's just kind of identifying the type of meeting that the youth can expect to go into so that they're prepared, you know, to discuss whatever it is that you're going to be taking care of that day.
Okay, great. So we have about 3 minutes left, and we have 2 more questions. So the one question is from Sarah, and it is, what are good ways to get new members of a youth council to bond with each other?
Mary
Well,
Kim, do you want to? Yeah.
I'll jump in and just say that at Unity we do a lot of different things, and one of those activities involves members of our executive committee. When they are first elected, a lot of them don't know each other very well, and they have monthly conference calls, so they don't even meet in person. But when they do get together, it's at a retreat, and you know, they spend a couple of days doing fun activities, and that's a good way to bond. I would say that fun and games is always, you know, good, and maybe you mark a day in your calendar where you're scheduling that so that there's no business meeting, there's, you know, only bonding time, and you can do that in a number of ways. I know that we utilize a lot of trainers, but there's things that you can find online that are good icebreakers, and then team building activities. And if you need some resources, we can absolutely provide that to you or make recommendations. So that would be one of my suggestions. I know that bonding happens in many ways. It could even be during a service project and community projects. So Lynn-Ann, any other ideas?
I would recommend the same thing. I would recommend doing a lot of icebreakers, get to know yous, bonding time outside of when business needs to be taken care of. And so again, like Mary Kim said, we do have a lot of resources. If you want to go ahead and contact us outside of the webinar time, we're definitely here willing to help.
Okay, great. And then our last question is Andrea, and her question is, since our youth council is also tied into our tribal, since we are going to attempt to create an intertribal youth council, how large is too large? Has this been done before? The land base is around 60 miles.
So that's one of the things that a lot of our youth actually face, our youth councils. They tend to be in rural areas, so they have to figure out ways, even if they can get together once a month, they try to get the most out of it. And so I'd say that try to get the most out of that time that you actually have with them when you can get them together. We've had youth councils upwards of 40 to 50 members. So, as small as 2 to 3 members, as large as 40 to 50 members. So I know that it's definitely doable. It's just you're just gonna have to figure out what would work best for you to get the most youth at your, meetings and have them get the most out of those meetings when they are there.
Okay, and just one follow-up question to that is, since our youth council is also tied into our tribal youth wellness court, we will also be creating a Native youth team peer court. Has anything like this been done before? If so, can you help me connect with people?
I will say that I'm not familiar with that having been done before. However, I can do some research to find that information for you. Mary Kim, are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. So I, again, would have to agree with Lynn Ann that I think together we can do some research and help at least direct you in the right direction or find some resources that could help.
And this is Kara. I do know that there has been a Native Youth Teen Peer Court, and we can help you connect with them. I'm not sure that they tied in a youth council as well, but between us, we can definitely contact some people and see who we can put you in touch with. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any more questions, but there are lots of people thanking Lynn Ann and Mary Kim, and so we appreciate that, and thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Adam.
Thank you for that, Kara. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today and close out our webinar here. As you can see, we've got contact information for Lynn Ann as well as for Unity. So if you have any additional follow-up questions, please reach out to them. Again, we also wanted to remind everyone to please take the online evaluation and give us your feedback. We're interested in hearing how you felt the webinar went. Again, we also will offer the archived recording of the webinar in our OJJDP Online University in about 3 weeks. So if you have a need or wanted to share it with a colleague, you could share the information here below with them. And for additional contact, you can reach myself at NTTAC or Kara, who's with OJJDP. And we also wanted to point out our disclaimer here. So if you have any questions, please take a moment to complete our online survey. And again, thank you for joining us, and have a great evening.